Welcome to the deep dive. We're going to do a deep dive into the recent ruble crash and its ripple effects on Chinese exporters.
Okay.
Um, you've been looking into all this stuff about the economic situation between Russia and China,
Yeah,
and there's a lot to unpack. So
absolutely.
let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we see the ruble took a pretty serious tumble last week,
Yeah.
hitting its lowest point against the U.S. dollar since the whole war in Ukraine began.
Right.
Can you give us some context here, like what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what's really fascinating here is that, we're talking about the US dollar, but the ruble's drop against the yuan is even more significant,
Hmm.
because Russia has really been trying to move away from the US dollar and the euro and
Right.
pivot towards the east. They've even declared the yuan to ruble rate as like their benchmark
Wow.
for other currencies.
Interesting.
So, they're saying we're pegging ourselves to the yuan. This is what we care about. And so this recent plunge is particularly worrisome for them.
Yeah, it's like they're saying we don't care about the dollar anymore.
Right.
And then their currency is tanking against the one they've pegged themselves to.
Yeah, exactly.
So this isn't just about the numbers. It's
Yeah.
really like a whole shift in like global power dynamics.
Totally.
But how's this impacting China specifically? Because our sources mentioned something about Chinese exporters kind of hitting the brakes.
Yeah. So basically, the ruble's instability is creating these huge headaches for businesses that are trading, especially, Chinese businesses that are trading with Russia. Imagine you're like a Chinese company and you're selling goods on a Russian, e-commerce platform or something.
Yeah.
And suddenly the payment that you were expecting in rubles is worth way less than it was a week ago.
Right.
That's eating into profit margins,
Yeah.
making it super risky to continue doing business.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
The sources even mentioned that some businesses are straight up refusing to ship goods until they get guarantees about payment.
Yeah.
Like they're calling it a halt on exports.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Russia has become increasingly reliant on China for imports, especially since this whole war began.
Right.
We're talking about like almost a doubling of imports from China to Russia. So like, you think about all the things like electronics and cars.
Right.
Those supply chains are so reliant on China.
Yeah.
So a slowdown in exports could have this huge ripple effect throughout the Russian economy.
Okay. So what does this all mean? Like, what's the big takeaway for someone listening to this right now?
So I think the ruble's crash is really a symptom of much larger economic vulnerabilities in Russia that are being like exacerbated by the war and these sanctions.
Right.
And this instability is spilling over to impact China, which is a key economic partner for them. And it really just highlights how interconnected the global economy is.
Yeah.
And how seemingly distant events can have these far-reaching consequences.
It's kind of crazy to think about. It makes you wonder how this is all going to play out in the long run.
Yeah.
Like, is this going to force Russia to kind of like reevaluate its reliance on China? Or will China find ways to kind of stabilize the situation and protect its own interests?
Yeah. I mean, one possibility is that Russia kind of like starts to diversify its trade partners.
Oh, interesting.
They might look to, other parts of Asia, maybe even Latin America, to try and, reduce their dependence on China.
Okay.
Another scenario is that China sees this as an opportunity
Oh,
to step in and further stabilize the ruble,
interesting.
potentially, increasing their economic influence over Russia.
So it's kind of like a high-stakes chess match
Totally.
where you've got both sides kind of maneuvering to make sure that they protect themselves.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And until next time.